On a bustling evening of December 15, 2025, in the grand lobby of a luxurious hotel with sparkling lights in the heart of New York City, an unusual event took place, leaving both the staff and guests shocked. Amid the atmosphere of sophistication and tranquility, a woman, clearly intoxicated, suddenly caused a commotion. With an air of arrogance, she loudly declared that she knew the top prosecutor in New York and challenged the police when they asked her to leave the area. Initially, the incident began as a simple disagreement, a minor clash between a guest and the staff. However, within a matter of minutes, the atmosphere in the hotel lobby completely changed. The intoxicated woman, despite being asked to leave, continued to stir the situation with outrageous, uncontrolled actions and offensive remarks. Not only did she act arrogantly, but she also repeatedly claimed that she had power, was acquainted with important figures in New York, leaving many in the crowd bewildered. The situation gradually escalated, from a simple argument to a dramatic performance between the woman and the hotel staff. The curious and concerned gazes of the guests quickly focused on her, while the hotel staff stood helpless, unsure of how to handle the situation. The scene not only captured the attention of those present, but also made the atmosphere tense, almost uncontrollable. People began whispering and exchanging worried glances, especially as she continued to hurl sharp insults at the police and staff. The situation kept escalating, and at some point, no one could predict how it would end. It seemed that everything was heading in a direction beyond anyone's control, surprising both the hotel and the police officers involved. Everyone was left wondering, is she really as powerful as she claims, or is this just an illusion fueled by her intoxication? A question filled with irony, as her power was nothing but empty words, unable to mask the reality that she was losing control of her actions. It seemed that her drunkenness had activated a self-proclaimed royal mode in her mind, as she suddenly stepped into the role of a ruler of New York with excessive confidence. She fully immersed herself in this character, no longer just a drunken guest, but an ultimate power that no one dared to defy. With her off-key voice due to the alcohol, she proudly declared that she knew the top prosecutor in New York, a statement that shocked those who heard it because of its suddenness and absurdity. However, instead of making this claim more convincing, she repeated it as if it were an outdated advertisement, leaving many feeling like they were part of a humorous game where she positioned herself as an important figure with no evidence to back it up. Not stopping at that statement, she continued to showcase her acting skills by demanding that the police immediately provide evidence that she was being treated unfairly. This request seemed to come from a fictional courtroom, where she was the only one with the power to decide, not a guest causing a disturbance in a hotel lobby. Without hesitation, she pretended to be the victim of a conspiracy, and her demand felt like a trivial lawsuit in a comedy film with a protagonist completely unaware of the situation. At this point, her drunkenness not only made her lose control of her behavior but also fueled her delusions of power, making her drift further from reality. But her performance didn't stop there. When the police asked her to leave the hotel, instead of leaving quietly like a normal person, she stubbornly dug in like a warrior unafraid of death, defying all attempts at persuasion from the staff and law enforcement. She arrogantly declared, "I paid for this room," as if it were an invulnerable shield that could protect her from any pursuit or hotel rules. This moment was the peak of her self-proclaimed power play, where she believed that her payment card was the golden ticket to control any situation, despite being the one violating the hotel's policies. Refusing all offers of cooperation, she switched to defensive mode with a series of creative and illogical tactics. Instead of simply leaving, she began using scathing language, mocking the appearance of the police officers with sharp and offensive remarks. These words weren't merely the frustration of a drunk person, but an expression of the belief that by mocking, ridiculing, and hurting others, she could make them afraid and make them leave. Perhaps in her mind, her words would act as weapons, causing the officers to back down, as if the police would ignore the rules and laws just because of a few sarcastic comments. In reality, however, this only highlighted a hidden weakness behind her arrogant exterior. She seemed to believe that these insults would erode the resolve of the authorities, or maybe she just wanted to cover up her own weakness in an entirely unfavorable situation. The truth was that her insults not only had no effect but further exposed her incompetence in handling a tense situation, leaving everyone witnessing the scene wondering whether she was aware of the seriousness of her actions. The woman's behavior not only surpassed the expectations of any guest at a luxurious hotel, but also unexpectedly presented the police with a psychological test that none of them had anticipated. In a formal space, where all guests were expected to behave with courtesy and respect the rules, she turned the hotel lobby into a stage for her self-proclaimed power performance. If this was how she chose to display the power she believed she had, then clearly, the empire she imagined was nothing more than a sandcastle about to be washed away by the waves. Vague promises of relationships with powerful figures, unbridled arrogance, and a ridiculous attitude of defiance, all combining into a dangerously baseless concoction. Notably, even though she claimed to be a powerful person, her every action reflected a different reality. She failed to understand that arrogance and defiance not only lost her the respect of those around her, but also shook the very values she was trying to build. Her lack of restraint in speech and action didn't just escalate the tension, it also revealed a serious flaw in her self-assessment, making others question the authenticity of her power claims. When she demanded that the police provide evidence of her being treated unjustly, or when she claimed to have powerful connections, it wasn't just absurd talk but also a sign of serious delusion. It was a blind assertion that power could be bought with money and relationships, failing to realize that the enforcement of the law and societal regulations cannot be deceived by cheap psychological games. While she tried to create a shield to protect herself with empty promises and blind confidence, she unintentionally exposed her own weakness and helplessness when facing reality. All her words and actions only further emphasized that what she was trying to build was merely a kingdom on sand, one that would inevitably collapse under the weight of the truth. In a situation where a self-proclaimed queen of power was attempting to build a royal empire right in the hotel lobby, the police officers exhibited astonishing composure, to the point of causing surprise and admiration. Truly, the way they handled this situation was no different than dealing with an angry cat trying to assert its power, rather than a drunk woman causing a commotion. The officers' calmness and poise throughout this tense situation could be seen as an outstanding performance, making them appear as actors completing a role in a dramatic play, where every detail was calculated and handled flawlessly. Despite having to face the woman's smug declarations like, "I know the prosecutor," "I have power," and her relentless insults, the officers remained unwavering with their composed demeanor, not swayed by her anger or the insults. In fact, this was not easy, as each of her statements felt like a stone thrown in their faces, but they still tried to maintain their professionalism to the maximum. They did not let personal emotions or agitation affect their behavior, but patiently continued to address the situation with the calmness of individuals trained to deal with tense situations. This is a commendable achievement, especially when considering the level of tension and the repetition of the insults they had to endure. The police had to handle not just a drunk person but also her delusions of power, something that could easily cause anyone lacking patience to be swept away by the storm of words and actions. However, the officers proved that their calmness in this situation was not just a professional skill, but also a characteristic of those in law enforcement who know that in every situation, professionalism must always come first. During the safety check, the police officers, with their calmness and patience, asked her a seemingly harmless question that actually contained a lot of courage. "Do you have anything dangerous on you?" This was a simple question, but one that made people think deeply about the nature of the situation. In fact, looking at the situation at that moment, the only real danger in that area seemed to be the woman's drunken attitude, one that was both defiant and unpredictable, like a ticking time bomb ready to explode at any moment. However, the miracle here was that the officers did not show any signs of being unsettled by her words and attitude, but continued their work with a sense of calm, showing they were well accustomed to handling tense and even dramatic scenarios like this. Even though she kept flailing, continuously making vague and baseless threats, the officers persisted in their positions and completed the safety check with seriousness and professionalism. It is clear that this was not the first time they had faced such a situation. They had likely encountered many others with attitudes as difficult as hers, and had probably gone through countless instances of calmly dealing with delusional threats and unfounded fears. This further highlights their ability to handle situations, as they didn't let her lack of restraint or the words thrown at them distract them from their mission. Throughout the entire dialogue, despite her constant insults and threats, the officers were not influenced and maintained their determination to complete their duties. They didn't get caught up in her chaotic words and actions, but instead continued working as though it was just another routine part of their job, as though they were trained to face everything from empty threats to high-stress scenarios. This shows that the professionalism and calmness of the police were the key factors in handling the situation without letting the woman's overreaction cause them to lose control. When the officers had to control and escort the woman into the car, the situation, which seemed like it couldn't get any more serious, unexpectedly turned into an endless farce. As she was being escorted, the woman continued to show her arrogance and inflated sense of self-worth. She boldly declared with confidence that she would be out of here in 5 minutes, as if she were in a contest to see who could leave the fastest rather than facing a serious legal situation. But it didn't stop there. She unexpectedly made a bizarre invitation. "Do you have a girlfriend? I like you." An invitation that might surprise many, but was entirely inappropriate in such a tense moment. The police officers, still maintaining their astonishing composure, simply responded politely to the invitation. "Yes, sorry, I'm engaged." Their response was not only a tactful refusal but also showed admirable patience in maintaining professionalism, despite facing her strange and uncontrollable actions. Truly, perhaps this polite rejection was even harder than controlling and escorting her into the car. It was not just a social courtesy, but a way of preserving their respect for themselves and their work while dealing with such a ridiculous situation. Although this situation might be seen as a comedy between threats and unexpected invitations, the calmness of the police officers in resolving the situation was the highlight of the story. They not only had to deal with unreasonable actions and words, but also had to manage a situation filled with mockery and absurdity, with an attitude from the woman that was incomprehensible. And while she continued playing the flirtation game, the officers completed their task without being distracted by her antics. Finally, when the woman was escorted into the police car, perhaps in the minds of the officers, a simple but meaningful question had emerged. "We'll definitely have an interesting story to tell at dinner tonight." The fatigue on their faces might not have shown immediately, but at this moment, they surely knew that the story they had just gone through was not an ordinary one. This would be one of the weirdest, most bizarre stories they could share with family and friends. A story about a drunken woman who claimed to be a powerful person, with challenging words, unreasonable flirting, and a baseless defiant attitude, all unfolding right in the hotel lobby. However, what's worth noting is that throughout this chaotic situation, the patience and professionalism of the officers never wavered. Even when insulted, mocked, and drawn into strange conversations, they still continued their work without being affected. They didn't let themselves be swept into her lack of control, but instead maintained their composure, following procedures with precision. This is a clear demonstration that patience and professionalism are not only essential qualities for law enforcement officers but also powerful tools that help them handle situations beyond imagination. When the situation ended, the officers could breathe a sigh of relief, but they couldn't help but feel proud of their ability to handle the situation. Because when faced with such chaotic scenarios, only those who are truly calm and capable of maintaining professionalism can overcome them without collapsing. And even though the woman's threats and ridiculous actions might have caused others to lose their composure, the officers maintained their poise and completed their mission without allowing any external factors to distract from their ultimate goal, protecting public order and safety. In her drunken state and excessive excitement, the woman seemed to have crowned herself as the Queen of Justice, as if the world around her was just a stage where she was the main star. She repeatedly emphasized that she was a person of power, saying it with unwavering belief. In reality, she was not just speaking to the police, but to everyone present, as though this were a major press conference where she was the central figure, asserting her position and power. She continuously declared the important connections she believed could protect her from any punishment, seemingly convinced that with just her words, she could escape any tricky situation. However, the way she kept repeating her statements about power didn't make her any more convincing. Instead, it made those around her feel as though they were witnessing a farcical performance. None of them, whether police officers or hotel guests, could fail to realize that this was not a serious declaration but just the empty boasts of a drunken woman. Her forceful words carried no weight and only created a bizarre picture of a queen hopelessly struggling against reality. This also made the police and the witnesses feel like they were watching a sitcom, where the script had nothing but ridiculous and over-the-top humor. She seemed to believe that her words would change the situation, but in reality, they only made her look more ridiculous in the eyes of those around her. The police, instead of being convinced, just remained silent and continued their work, as though they were dealing with a situation that had nothing new other than the repetition of empty words. Not only did she declare her power, but this woman also decided to spice up her performance with a series of insulting, crude remarks aimed directly at the officers. Instead of offering any reasonable explanation for her actions, she chose a different approach: personal attacks with creative yet brutal nicknames. From calling them fat-faced to incompetent, she didn't hesitate to use every kind of insult that could offend the listener, as though she were participating in a caricature competition about the police officers. In her drunken state, it seemed she believed that by dragging the officers into a personal attack, she could restore the power and confidence she had lost. She thought these mockery-laden words would make the police step back, or at least make them feel confused and hesitant. But in reality, everything unfolded in the opposite direction. These words not only failed to intimidate or subdue anyone but, on the contrary, made the atmosphere even more awkward and uncomfortable. Those witnessing it, from hotel staff to guests in the lobby, couldn't help but feel like they were watching a strange comedy show where the main character kept launching verbal attacks without realizing she was disqualifying herself from the game. Especially when the officers remained calm, continuing their work without being affected by the challenging and offensive remarks. They were like professional actors, not allowing themselves to be dragged into her dirty game but instead staying patient and professional in carrying on with their tasks. This not only highlighted their composure but also made her insulting words look even more pathetic, like meaningless echoes in that tense atmosphere. And as if to further emphasize the innocent victim role she was trying to play, this woman continued to resist and blame everyone around her without mercy. Every action of the police, every decision made by the hotel staff, seemed to her like part of a sinister plot to bring her down. The police asked her to leave the hotel? Oh, there was no doubt that it was a pre-planned strategy to humiliate her. The hotel didn't want her to stay? Surely, they had done something wrong, and she, in her drunken stupor, demanded they replay the security camera footage to prove she was the victim of a scam. In her world, it seemed everyone around her had only one purpose: to go against her. Everyone was wrong, from the police officers to the hotel staff, and she alone was the only one right. She failed to realize that she was the only one in an indefensible position, with clear evidence of her breaking the law, and her steadfast defiance only made things worse. But in her delusional universe, everything could be explained the way she wanted. Every word she spoke was an attempt to justify her actions. Every reaction of hers seemed like part of a script she had written herself. With unwavering confidence, she continued to believe she was the center of attention, the only one who could decide what was right or wrong in this situation. And although all the surrounding factors were against her, she kept living in her bubble of arrogance, unaware that it was this very wrong-headed determination that made everyone around her feel exasperated and powerless. Surely, if she looked back on the event after sobering up, she would realize that she wasn't the victim. Rather, she was the one creating unnecessary accidents for herself. This over-the-top behavior not only made her the center of attention, but also unintentionally turned her into the leading actress in a self-written comedy show. The police and hotel staff, perhaps, could only restrain themselves from laughing at this impromptu script. After all the power declarations, the insulting words, and the acts of resistance, the woman finally faced the harsh reality. She was arrested for trespassing. Perhaps her dream of leaving in 5 minutes, as she confidently claimed earlier, was completely shattered when the police car's wheels rolled away, taking the Queen of Power to the place she least wanted to go. Not only that, but she also received a special souvenir from the hotel, a 1-year ban from returning. This meant that if she wanted to reenact her dramatic performance, she would have to wait until next year, and the condition was that she bring an apology rather than more baseless threats. As for the family, her mother, who was likely already used to her daughter's heart-stopping situations, was notified to pick her up after she was released. One can imagine her mother arriving with a bag full of bread and a tired look, wondering if there was any way to stop her daughter from dramatically exercising power in the future. In the end, the woman's performance not only left the witnesses laughing but also provided a lesson for her. Self-proclaimed power cannot defeat the law, especially when you're banned from a place you declared to be your loyal customer. After all her bold claims of knowing top New York prosecutors and her dramatic resistance, the woman was finally escorted to the station. Perhaps as she walked into the police station, she was still dreaming of being special because of her claimed powerful connections, but the harsh reality was that she was being hosted by the very law she thought she stood above. Meanwhile, the hotel, the unsuspecting victim of this self-written power performance, was given specific guidance on how to handle similar situations if they were to recur. Perhaps, alongside their strict security procedures, they should consider adding a course on drunken guest psychological analysis or preparing a small sign that reads, "Please don't trespass and claim to be a prosecutor. We are already exhausted." And so, the show concluded with a clear lesson for all. No matter how much you fake power, the law will still find a way to sober you up, even if it takes a police car ride and an unforgettable night at the station. With such impressive displays of power while intoxicated, this story serves as a clear warning about controlling your behavior when you've had too much, especially when you're in a public place. No one wants to become the star of viral clips because of offensive language and an arrogant attitude, especially when the police and hotel staff are witnessing your performance. Remember, power can quickly disappear when you can't stand tall and are just stumbling around. An equally important lesson is respecting the rules and cooperating with the authorities. No matter who you are, a prosecutor, a person of power, or even the drunken queen, cooperating with the police will always help you save a lot of things, from time to unnecessary bruises. Don't let your ego, along with a bit of drunkenness, put you in an awkward situation. Instead of being the hero in an action movie, you could simply be an ordinary citizen, enjoy your dinner, and go home safely without having to appear in the headlines.